here today, happy to have an opportunity to talk with Poppy Tucker from New Orleans, Louisiana, a popular host of Louisiana Eats that you can hear on NPR or get via podcast, and cookbook author and all-around foodie. So pleasure to meet you, and thanks for taking time to speak with us today.
Well, it's nice to meet you this way virtually too, David.
How are things in New Orleans these days? Are the businesses starting to reopen and come back some?
Yeah, it's an interesting dance. We're coming up on St. Patrick's Day, which is, a big holiday in New Orleans. And the three biggest Irish bars have voluntarily said they're going to be closed on St. Patrick's Day because they're having their own crowd issues.
Hmm.
So they don't want to encourage people. So anyway, but it's, some folks are going to make it and some are not. It's been quite a struggle.
Right. Well, one of the things that's always amazed me about New Orleans is that I think typically in the restaurant business, there's usually a lifespan for a restaurant, maybe 5 or 10 years. And a lot of times at that point, the restaurateurs will close and redecorate and reopen in a totally different name. But yet here we are still talking about names that have been around for hundreds of years, serving the same menu pretty much even, right? And I think that's really says a lot about the food of New Orleans and French cooking, French influenced cooking.
Well, it does. People in New Orleans, we don't like things to change. And so I'm happy to report that we haven't lost any of our grand dames yet to this COVID situation. Everybody's hanging in there.
Well, that's good to hear. Did you growing up? Did you people that like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen, or did you eat out more at restaurants in the area?
Uh, Growing up, well, that's how I started cooking. You see, my mother was a princess who equated housekeeping, well, cooking to the worst sort of housekeeping. So there was a housekeeper who fed me and loved me and took care of me until I was 10. And when she retired, there was nothing good to eat ever again. And so I began cooking in self defense at about the age of 10. And by the time I was 12, I was doing all of the cooking at home. As a matter
Ah,
of fact, when I turned 18 and was getting ready to go off to college, my poor mother, in her inimitable fashion, went to the French market and bought a bushel of bell peppers and had me stuff a bushel of bell peppers for her to put in the freezer so she would know there was something good to eat.
that's great. Well, similar story to me growing up, though. We do come from a family that has always, spent time cooking, certainly, and enjoyed that and learning a lot of the classic New Orleans recipes. But at the same time, there was a time when I was younger when pretty much was left to my own from time to time to cook dinner, and the typical can of ravioli probably wasn't going to cut it because I'd been taken all around the world and been given great food. And so, how do you come home from that and not desire to still have it? Of course, back then it was somewhat difficult because some of the ingredients were hard to find. If you wanted escargot, well, it'd be pretty tough to find the snails. You'd have to look long and hard. But nowadays, it's amazing what we can find at our local grocery store. The people today, our generation, I have a daughter who's a millennial, and they are so fortunate. Um, the things they have access to now.
Oh, yes, mine. I have one too. She's a bacon eating vegan, which means that she's kind of flexitarian about what she does, and she's a wonderful adventurous cook. It's great being able to have her around to cook with.
Right. Well, I wanted to learn about one of your cookbooks recently, chronicling one of the restaurants in town, Tushago's, and
Two Jacks? You mean two
yeah, yeah,
Jacks?
yeah.
It's like TWO. As a matter of fact, people who heard the name of it and were coming here for the first time often looked for a sign that said TWOJACKS. But that's actually the surname of Guillaume and Marie Abadi Tujac, who opened up the restaurant originally in 1856 across from the French Market.
I was
And
going to say, so it must have been near Cafe du Monde, so that's probably
it
similar
was
time frame, right?
I think possibly before. I mean, the oldest continuously serving establishment in the city is 1840, and that's
Hmm.
Antoine's. But anyway, Tujague's was opened up 3 doors down from their longtime location at the corner of Madison and Decatur. They moved in there in 1917 because that was when Madame Biguet, the second Madame, moved out. She was the great culinarian of New Orleans who invented the meal we know today as the brunch. And she was the number one tourist attraction in New Orleans in the late 1890s. And so that's why the Tujague's people who had been catching her overflow, serving a similar menu, and she would only do a certain number of what she called butcher's breakfasts every day, no matter what, 7 days a week. And so they were catching the overflow when Madame Biguet moved. Tujague's established themselves there. And then the third family to own Tujague's is now involved with it, the Latter family.
Huh.
So
And you obviously you're a frequent customer in it. Tell me, you have a story about a ghost, Julian Eltinge. Is that how you pronounce it?
L. Tinge, Julian
Okay.
L. Tinge. And see, we meet Julian L. Tinge in the Tujague's book. And then Julian went on to have a book of his own almost when my last book came out in the summer of 2019, which was Drag Queen Brunch. But there was a photograph that was hanging at Tujague's, and it had been there for since actually that was dated 1911. And I'd ask, who is that person in the photograph? Because a lot of celebrity photographs were hanging on the wall. And I spent a lot of time there when I was researching the book. And they would say to me, oh, that's the cross dresser. And I think, the cross dresser, what the heck are they talking about? But I never inquired. And then Mark Latter, the current owner, his father had died unexpectedly in 2012. And so Mark took the restaurant over and he did a quick little facelift on the old girl. And he took the picture down, the picture of Julian Eltinge that had hung on the wall in the same spot since 1911. Well, a short while after that, a young couple were dining at Tujague's and they snapped a selfie. And when they got home, well, I sent you the picture. Over in the corner of the room, looking out from exactly where his photograph had hung for all those years, was the image of Julian L. Tinge. So when Mark saw the photo posted on Facebook by the young couple, he contacted me and he said, Poppy, I think we've got a ghost. Who do you think that is, Madame Biguet? And I took one look at the picture and I said, no, Mark, that's the cross dresser, not knowing anything. Mark, where is the picture? Mark said, oh, I put it up in the attic. And I said, well, Mark, obviously the ghost is pissed about that and he wants to get back on the wall. So he got Julian Eltinge out the attic and hung back on the wall. And that was the end of that. But Julian and I became great buddies as I researched his life and learned he was the number one celebrity in America in the teens and 20s and 30s. He never appeared on stage or screen dressed as a man. He only appeared dressed as a woman. And he was even in a silent movie with Rudolph Valentino entitled Isle of Love. I mean,
Hmm.
it's wild the accomplishments that he had, and yet he's largely unknown today, except in the last few years, the LGBTQ community has rediscovered Julian Eltinge, and he's having a renaissance.
Uh-huh. So going back to Jack's, do they have a signature dish, or there's something that they're particularly known for that we can find us
Two
cooking?
things. Yep, two things. One of them is their boiled beef. It's a boiled beef, delicious dish that's served with a spicy cocktail, horseradishy, yummy sauce. And that was a dish that was a very typical meal for the butchers. The butcher's market was right across the street from where Tujague's was. And in fact, Guillaume Tujague himself was a butcher before he opened his restaurant. So that has been on the menu since the very, very earliest days. That and a special that's not on the menu. You have to know to pre-order it, but they serve a chicken bon femme that is just out of this world. It's like a fried chicken, unlike any you've ever had, because there's no batter. It's not coated. It's just fried to a crispy brown and topped with a persillade of fresh garlic and parsley, sprinkled over the top while it's piping hot with French fried potatoes in there, rounds of potatoes. The garlic cooks just a little bit and it's divine. And that prepares you for Tujague's signature drink, because, you know, Tujague's was the site of America's oldest stand-up bar. And so, of course, there's an important drink that comes from there. And actually, in 1918, right before Prohibition began, Otis Guichet, who was the second owner of Tujague's, he had purchased the business in the early 1900s from Guillaume Tujague. He competed in a cocktail contest in New York City and won second place with a drink he called the Grasshopper. So the grasshopper was actually invented at Tujague's. And after he won second place, nobody remembers who won first. He brought the grasshopper home to New Orleans, where it has remained a mainstay at Tujague's bar ever since.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I also noticed that you did a book on a restaurant that takes me back, and that's Pasquale Manwali's. I can remember going there as a young person and having the barbecued shrimp. It was always a stop that we would make whenever we visited my grandparents in New Orleans, and I'm happy to see that it's still going strong. I've always wondered, is this pretty far out of the city, as I recall, right?
No, no, David, your memories are so fuzzy. It's Pascal. It's Pascal's. It's very strange. There's actually a possessive on the Pascal, so it's Pascal's Manali restaurant. As a matter of fact,
Pronouncing like the family did.
it's like it's Pascal's Manali, and it may remind you of the other famous Ruth's Chris. And in fact, Ruth Fertel is said to have gotten her inspiration when she bought Chris's Steakhouse. Well, it was just like when Pascal Radasta took over his uncle Frank Manali's restaurant, it became Pascal's Manali, and both of the names stayed on it. So that is where barbecued shrimp were invented. It's a very popular place for people who live uptown in New Orleans. That's right in the heart of the city, near Tulane University, near Audubon Park. And it was the reason I wanted to write that book. The reason I wrote that book is because I had written the Tujague's book, which is the second oldest continuously operating second oldest continuously operating restaurant in the city of New Orleans, okay? Second to Antoine's. Well, Pascal Manali's was, until late 2019, the second oldest continuously operating family-owned restaurant in New Orleans. And so that's what spurred me on to write the book. And I'm so grateful that I was able to record the story of the family and write all of those recipes down, because tragically, the family sold the business. That the fifth generation did not want to carry it on, and they couldn't figure out a succession plan. And all I can tell you is I don't eat there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the book.
Enough said.
Yeah, you know, when there's frozen margaritas at the bar at Manali's, and the food is just, so yeah, there you go. But anyway, thank God, Antoine's restaurant, our crown jewel, the crown jewel in all the U.S., is still hopping along, the home of Oysters Rockefeller, the place where so many classic dishes were either invented or popularized. our Antoine's restaurant is still blowing and going on St. Louis Street.
Good. Happy to hear that. I remember going there frequently myself. So going back to Tujague's, and obviously you had said that they really built their business off of brunch. I understand that you also host in the city another very interesting brunch that's coming up, right? The drag queen brunch. Tell us about that.
Well, drag queen brunch, I'll tell you, it's the funniest thing. It all started because of the cross-dressing ghost. When I wrote the Tujague's book and it came out, I had long been the the celebrity spokesperson for Dining Out for Life, which is the oldest fundraiser for an organization called the No AIDS Task Force. The No AIDS Task Force was one of the very first organizations formed in the United States in response to the AIDS pandemic. And they have this fantastic Dining Out for Life thing they do every year. I've been their chair. I've always been very involved at the No AIDS Task Force, which then morphed and became crescentcare. And so my buddies at the No AIDS Task Force, they knew all about my Tujague's book. And they said, well, Poppy, since there's a cross-dressing ghost at Tujague's, why don't we have a drag queen brunch to celebrate? And we can raise money for the task force. So I said, well, that's a great idea. So that's how we started doing what we called Poppy's pop-up drag brunches. And they were all for charity. They all benefited Crescent Care. It was absolutely so much fun. We would often bill it as 3 courses for drag queens and all the mimosas you can drink. And so all the fun we had for a couple of years. One day I just got seized by this. It was a compulsion that came on me in January of 2019. And I said, I'm going to write the book, Drag Queen Brunch. And I did. It was the most fun project I ever did. And thank God it came out in the summer of 2019, because there haven't been many drag queen brunches much since 2020 rolled along. The last one, as a matter of fact, we did was March the 8th, 2020, and then the doors closed. But
All right.
I'm sure the girls are ready to go and we'll be roaring back soon. I'm getting my second vaccination on Friday, and I have a whole new outlook on life.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, obviously, there are a lot of great restaurants in New Orleans. You almost, can't make a bad choice out of all the famous names that you've mentioned. But I'm curious as to whether you have a personal favorite.
Oh my goodness. Well, not one, but
Mm.
I have a lot of wonderful personal friends. And there's something about knowing who's cooking the food for you that sometimes just makes that food a little better. So I am a big fan of Frank Brightston's restaurant, Brightston's, which is in the River Bend in the Carrollton area. I love Michael Galata and what he has done at Mofo, where he has created a fusion of Vietnamese and South Louisiana food that is just amazing. And then you absolutely can't go wrong with the meal at Susan Spicer's restaurant, Bayona, either in the French Quarter or her one in Mid-City, Rosedale, where you can get that turtle soup every day and you can get it to go.
Yes, I remember Bayona quite well. It's certainly one, but the one that always sticks out in my mind, I think, has to be Commander's Palace. And they used to have a crawfish dish there that they would do with it out of the tail, so I didn't have to make a mess of myself to enjoy the crawfish, and then sort of a spicy red sauce. I don't know if they still have that dish, but I still can remember it to this day. Just looking forward to having that anytime I could get to New Orleans. So,
of course, Commander's Palace. Commander's Palace is the place where the jazz brunch was invented.
mm-hmm. I did
That
not know they
whole
invented
category
that.
began with Dick Brennan. He was in Europe with his family one summer, and he called his sister Ella because he was so impressed by the buskers performing outside of the European cafes. And he said, that's what we need at Commander's. We need some music. And Ella said, well, Dick, come home and get that going. And so one day the jazz brunch was born, and it's been rocking and rolling over there ever since.
And what do you have any other projects coming up that you have planned in the near future that we should know about?
Well, I'm working on a little book for a sweet, sweet Sicilian New Orleans family who actually hail from the West Bank, from Gretna. And, there's Mandina's restaurant that everybody knows about on Canal Street. But over on the West Bank, there is a restaurant called Tony Mandina's, who'll be celebrating their 40th year starting in November of this year. So I'm writing a little cookbook for them, and we're having the best time. And I am learning so many delicious recipes. Goodness, yesterday we cooked, it may not sound good, but believe me, it was delicious. A dish that was sardines and spaghetti with something that the Sicilians call mudrica, which represents the sawdust of St. Joseph sprinkled on top instead of cheese. It's breadcrumbs and it's garlic. It's yummy. Anyway, so this sardine spaghetti dish, pretty good. And it's one of the amazing dishes that's going to be in this new book coming out this fall. So I'm pretty
Right,
excited about that.
and it sounds like sardines are sort of the hot topic lately too, for their health benefits. So timely to be
Yeah.
talking about that. Have you been able to continue to do your Louisiana Eats programs as usual? Have you had to adjust a lot because of COVID-19 to keep that going?
Well, inherent in radio is that you want to have a soundproof studio, and soundproof usually means small and airtight. And that's certainly the truth about our studio, which is located in the Southern Food and Beverage Museum. We haven't done an in-person interview in the studio since late February of last year. Everything that we've done has been on Zoom, but we're changing, and at least half vaccinated. I'm doing interviews now in a socially distanced way. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm very excited. We're going to be taking our listeners on a tour of El Guapo Bitters, which is just one of the most hot, successful bitters companies nationally. And then we're going to sit down and do an interview with Nina Compton, the first Black woman to ever win a James Beard Award, who, of course, has Bywater, American Bistro, and Compère La Pen, which is the one she won the James Beard for.
Huh.
So, yeah, we're in our 11th year, and we're blowing and going with Louisiana Eats. And people can find, we were a podcast before there were podcasts. It's so funny. We're still a broadcast. That's like a dinosaur thing almost. It's so
Right.
It's amazing to me. But anyway, since we were on public radio from the very start, all of our shows have been archived and are available online. So if you're ever hungry for a little bit of Louisiana Eats, you can absolutely have all your fill at poppytooker.com.
All right, well, next time Jazz Fest comes around, we'll have to remind everybody of that. They brush up on their eat food history and get excited about getting back to New Orleans again. It's such a wonderful city. My younger one's been. My older one's been. My younger hasn't been. So it's been certainly we've been looking forward to the opportunity to bring her down there and see what it's all about someday soon. So.
Well, New Orleans is a good place for children too. People don't always think that, but we've got one of the most state-of-the-art children's museums in the country. We've got an incredible zoo. And the streetcar ride, well, that's just for everybody, no matter how old you are.
Agreed. I take my older one to the zoo, and we do have a pretty famous story of bringing her out there to the zoo and sitting her down in the park in the grass to have a little snack. And all of a sudden, she starts yelling and screaming. She was young, probably 4 or 5 years old. It turns out we sat her down and there was some red ants around and she was getting bit
Oh,
by red ants. And so I never
oh,
heard what that was all about, poor thing. But she
oh.
remembers that so well to you to this day.
I bet she does. I bet she does.
Good times. And anyone else you are going to be interviewing on Louisiana Eats coming up that you know of yet? Or
Oh gosh, I'm following a story right now, finding it very interesting about Black-owned businesses. Vance Vaucresson, who is the last of the original vendors from the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. His father, Sonny, was the original there, and Vance was just a newborn baby at that very first Jazz Fest. So Vance has had some very difficult times since Katrina getting his business really blowing and going like it was before. And he is about to open up a bricks and mortar place in the site of the original Vaucresson meat market. He's a fourth generation butcher. He's an amazing man. So we're going to hear an update from Vance very soon. I'm going to catch up with the entire Chase family, the ones that Leah, my best buddy, used to call her grands. And all of the grands have taken over Dookie Chase restaurant. And we're going to have a sit down with all the grands that I know is going to be grand. And my buddy Leah will be smiling on us from heaven, I'm sure.
yeah, that sounds like it could be a lot of fun too. Have you seen at all around town? You know, we have our photos been taken with Paul Prudhomme, God bless his soul, and Emeril Lagasse. Do you see Emeril around town? Is he still in the New Orleans area? Or
Emerald's not here ever. No,
no, no.
no. Emerald laid off his corporate chef of 28 years this summer. So I don't know. I don't know what Mr. Lagasse's doing, but we don't see him here.
Yeah, who's kind of taken over the limelight, so to speak, from that genre of famous food
Well,
icons?
the most wonderful news that we've had in a long time is that when Tori McPhail, who was one of the longest running chefs at Commander's Palace, when Tori decided during the pandemic that he wanted to go back to Montana and be closer to his family, they elevated from the staff within this amazing woman named, oh gosh, Meg Bickford. Has blanking on her last name. Meg Bickford. Meg was the first executive chef that the Brennan's family ever had, a female executive chef. That was at Cafe Adelaide when they had that business downtown in the Lowe's Hotel. And since Cafe Adelaide had closed, Meg was back at Commander's, and now Meg is the first female chef to ever be at the helm of that amazing Commander's kitchen. So that's some big news for you.
Huh. And special month for that kind of news too, right? So
Yeah.
good. Um, well, listen, it was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you and getting the updates on what's going on in New Orleans, because it really has been a long time since I've been there. It's been at least 8 years. So I am definitely it's been on our list for a long time, and hopefully things will come roaring back pretty quickly once the world recovers from all this.
Well, come
And
on down and bring
you
those
know,
children. Make sure you give me a ring when you get here, and we'll make sure to
um,
have some delicious fun.
I will definitely do that, and likewise, we hope to see you out on the road someday. If you happen to get over to Europe or anything like that, happen to be there when we're there, I'd love to introduce you to some interesting things. We have the nice luxury of really meeting food producers from all over the world, and it's a lot of fun and very interesting to see what's going on in the food business these days. And healthy cooking seems to be the thing, but that's not necessarily what I think about when I think about New Orleans. But
Bring
uh,
on the butter.
yeah, I don't know whatever happened to that and a roux. I mean, that's what the one thing my grandmother embedded in me is you better know how to brown a roux properly, or you're just not going to be able to be my grandson. So, but it's amazing how as soon as you get away from the city and see people talking about gumbo. I know you have a famous gumbo story. Didn't you once compete on the national stage, making
Yeah,
gum.
well, I was once the victim of a throwdown with Bobby Flay, and I thoroughly spanked him during that ordeal. And much, much better than that silly throwdown that I was on was the Sunday morning that I got to be on CBS Sunday Morning with Wynton Marsalis. It
Oh,
was the last time Super Bowl was in New Orleans, and Winton, who is a cultural correspondent to CBS Sunday Morning, had written an ode to gumbo, and the segment was all about how people in New Orleans make gumbo in their homes. Winton came into my home. I made gumbo for him, and at the end of the segment, he sat down with a bowl of steaming gumbo in front of him, and he took a spoonful and he put it in his mouth, closed his eyes, and he said, "Have mercy, Poppy." So my when my Bobby Flay throwdown gumbo became the "Have Mercy, Poppy" gumbo, I liked it much better that way.
I'm sure that's fun. Well, at any rate, it's a pleasure talking to you. Maybe we'll get together and do some cooking someday. And I appreciate you taking the time. And all the best and good luck getting your second shot. And we can hopefully get back to normal sooner than later.
Amen. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.